believe this, that if a politician is going to order a lockdown that's going to result in tens of thousands, if not millions, of workers not being able to go to work and earn a living, I think that it's fundamentally wrong and immoral that the people who are imposing those conditions, our elected officials, don't have to suffer the same consequence. So I would say that before or at the same time that the politicians order a lockdown that prevents people from going out and earning a living, taking home a paycheck, I think that at the same time those politicians should suspend their own pay for the same amount of time. There is no element of leadership from the front here. That's the maddening thing here about some of these guys going away on vacation over the Christmas holiday season, Nick. In principle, I don't really care. And in fairness, there were no rules that said you couldn't travel out of the country and go on vacation. The rules were stay at home. The reason, and it wasn't even a rule, it was people were being asked to stay at home rather than going to their neighbors or their families and having large congregations of concentrations of people at Christmas dinner or at New Year's celebrations or parties or whatever. And that wasn't an unreasonable request. What makes it unreasonable, it wasn't unreasonable in and of itself, but what makes it unreasonable is that the very people who are saying stay at home, rather than showing leadership and saying we're staying at home also, we are going to lead from the front, lead by example. Rather than doing that, they say stay at home, and then they off they go on vacation. And to add insult to injury, Nick, let's not forget that the people who are going off on vacation are still getting paid even when they're off on vacation. Okay, so they're not, one of the things that some of us are, that don't draw a paycheck during a situation like this, it's not just a question of them staying home because the government has asked them to, or because they want to do their part in trying to control the spread of this infection. It's that they can't afford to go away because they're not getting paid because they're not being allowed to work. So that to me, that is the worst possible situation where, you were in the Navy, Nick, okay? Officers and senior NCOs have privileges that other people, lower ranks, may not have. But there's a line that you don't cross. And you have to, and many times I saw senior officers sacrificing their own privileges and their own rights by virtue of their senior rank in order to allow their men and women under their command to enjoy something that they otherwise may not have. For instance, okay, let's take a Christmas dinner, for instance. Let's say there isn't enough turkey to go around if you happen to be at sea, and we're serving a Christmas dinner, and we happen to have turkey, and in the galley people are going to be having turkey, or in the wardroom, but in the officers' wardroom, because there wasn't enough, officers might say, well, the captain will say, the skipper will say, sorry guys, no turkey for us because we have to feed the rest of the crew. It's an example of what you could see real leadership, a real caring for the people under your command. And in this respect, politicians are like military officers, senior officers, and the rest of us are under their command when it comes to the exercise of lawful authority. So for pity's sake, lead from the front. So all of these people that have resigned or have been fired, I think they got what they deserved, not because they were breaking rules, but because they were demonstrating a profound and fundamental lack of understanding as to what leadership really is. I didn't pop my safety valve there, Nick.
Well, I could see the pressure was getting close. You were up around 560 pounds, and they're set to go at 565 and 567. But anyway, look, there's nothing I can argue with that. One of the primary things about leadership is you look after those you're responsible for first, and then you worry about yourself. And that's an age-old axiom inside and outside the military. And certainly it should be within the halls of political power, is that the people that you're responsible for are the ones that elected you, and you have to look after them first. And if you can't look after them first, then maybe you shouldn't be there, or there'd better be a pretty extenuating circumstance. And so far, there has been nothing to indicate they know anything about leadership, much less fulfilling their fiduciary duty toward the people who elected them. And this is what drives people crazy. I mean, the hypocrisy goes without saying. I mean, don't you guys travel because you know how easy it is to spread this stuff. Oh, by the way, I'm off to Jamaica, or I'm off to Hawaii. Don't look for me around the council table because I'm going to be somewhere else. This kind of stuff smacks of do what I say, not what I do, and it's like an acid that undermines our very democratic institutions that people have come to count on. And that's what we are building a nation for, is to have solid institutions that protect our rights and our freedoms and allow us the greatest amount of freedom within reason. You can't have anarchy, but the more sophisticated a society becomes, the more you have to guard and be careful about how you impose the government on those freedoms. And as long as that's the case, then where do you go from there? So you have a lot of people out there who are just shrugging their shoulders, and others like you and I who are banging the tables and doing our best to sound the alarm. I'm not going to say I'm Winston Churchill, but I think I understand his frustration a little bit, trying to get people to understand the threat. And they just don't seem to, a lot of people just don't seem to care. And those who do feel as frustrated as you and I do.
Now, what I don't get in all of this, Nick, is after all is said and done, I don't get why the governments, let's say plural here, because it's not just the one in Ontario, I don't get why they're doing so well in the polls. I don't get why the population isn't looking around and going, something is wrong here, but instead they're just doing really well in the polling. The population seems to think they're doing a great job, and I just don't see it. I mean, I'm sympathetic. I really am sympathetic. So it's tough to be in the position that these guys are in. Okay, but for goodness sakes. You're worried about overflowing hospitals? Put some field hospitals up in parking lots, okay? And if you really truly believe that people going to a New Year's Eve party are going to catch the virus, well, you know what? Let them catch the virus, because most of them are going to not have any serious illness from it. Okay, because statistically that's what we already know about it. And the few that maybe are going to be ill and have to have some sort of hospitalization, let them have second-class health care in a field hospital, okay? And get on with vaccinations, which is a separate issue altogether. And eventually this is going to go away. It won't entirely disappear from the planet, but it'll get under control. Nobody should be afraid of this. But instead what we do is we punish the whole population. And again, Nick, I have to say it. We punish the whole population except for the people who are holding the whip. And they're off on vacation.
Right.
That to me is unforgivable.
Well, if I got to agree with you. I was looking at Ford's numbers earlier today, and he's at 46% in the polls. How can that be? Now, to partly answer that question, and I'm not going to say this is it completely, what politicians at every level have done is have done everything they can to make people feel safe. They might not be any safer or any more in danger, but it's the bubble wrap mentality. We must do this for safety's sake, even though the threat is infinitesimal. Okay, you just can't have any threat to human life at all, unless it's sanctioned by the state, such as abortion and euthanasia. That's different. But outside of that, you have a situation where, oh my God, there's this dread disease and the government's got to save me. So the government says, all right, we'll save you. And here's how we're going to do it. And everybody goes, oh, I can't go without a mask, but at least I'm safe. And that rag on their face doesn't make them any more safe than walking around without one. It's just, this is playing to the masses. This is Caesar feeding the masses with bread that they're going to need in the fall to get through the winter. You know, I don't know how else to explain it, if there's any explanation at all, but I think that partly at least answers the question. People, when they are afraid, will look to grab at any rope to pull themselves out of the mess. And the government's on the other end saying, just relax, we'll take care of you. Don't worry. Just go along with what we want and everything's going to be fine. Well,
I'm tired of it, Nick. I'm tired of it, and I'm not a fan of civil disobedience, but I'm getting close. I have to say that, and I don't care who's listening to the show and who's going to play it back or anything like that. I'm getting close to civil disobedience here. If they impose in Ontario a curfew, you could very well be reading about me being arrested the next day, because I could just be. Yeah, and I never do this, by the way. I'm a homebody. If I don't have a reason to be out, or like a legitimate good reason to be out, in the evenings I'm at home with my wife, spending the evening together. I mean, that's what we do. We're not exciting people, Nick. I've had enough excitement in my life. I'm not looking for any more excitement. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. So if they impose this curfew, I could just...
doesn't have to mean.
Go ahead.
Civil disobedience does not have to mean armed insurrection. I don't think that's what we're talking about here at all.
Not. Right.
It just means we ignore things like lockdowns. We ignore things like curfews. We don't wear masks. We just tell them through our actions that we're just not going to play that game anymore. It's what I've been calling for since March. I mean, at some point you've got to say, and again, it's not about a violent overthrow. It's just a simple flip them the bird. We're not playing this game. You can pass all the laws you want to, but we are not going to respond. These are illegitimate laws. They are not just laws, and they serve no useful purpose. Like, I'm not saying we should ignore laws about murder or even speeding or things like that. Laws that obviously have a good for the population as a whole to protect us against, the bad guys. In this case, the government is the bad guy. And when they try to impose their will on us, even though it does not make our lives better or really improve safety in a real tangible way, if it doesn't gain us anything, then that law is illegitimate in my estimation and should be ignored. Probably the best way to go about defeating this thing is for people just to get in their cars, wait till 9 o'clock, and go for a drive.
Okay, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go for a break. We're going to get our theoretical, hypothetical, esoterical, fantastic, imaginary cars, and we're going to be going now for a drive. So we'll be back. If you're listening to the live show, we'll be back in a few minutes. If you're listening to the podcast, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on the Nick and Joe Show here on ThinkRadio.ca.